I'm Brandon Jacoby, and today we're going to take a closer look at Nova cues and Nubs Wagner. Alright, here are some examples of some of Nova's cues, or Nub Wagner's cues. Nubs was a very good friend of my dad's. My dad had met Nubs in the very early 90s, I would say 96, 97. He had met Nubs through the American Cue Makers Association, and they became very good friends. Nubs was very influential in our career. He had assisted us with learning how to do inlay work, how to install other wraps, how to do the finish work. And Nubs had, in my opinion, was one of the greatest cue makers ever in the fact that he had worked for a lot of legendary cue makers. He was one of the first employees of McDermott. He worked for Schoen. He worked in Jackson Cues, and then he started Nova Cues, which was out of West Bend, Wisconsin. Nubs had allowed us to come to his shop and visit, and was always open with anything that we ever wanted to know about building cues. Some of his influences, he used a lot of stainless steel and 5/16 14. One of the reasons why we used a 5/16 14 in stainless steel was very influential from Nubs. A lot of our inlay designs are very similar in blocky geometric patterns. He was the first one to introduce me to BobCAD, which he used as software. In fact, he had given me a book from BobCAD, one of the very early softwares that he had introduced me to. In fact, I still currently use it. I started using this software when it was still a DOS version. So he had a lot of influence in our career. So looking at the cues, you can see the different logos on the bottom of the cues. He had 3 basic logos that he used. This first Nova was between 1994 and 1997, and then he transitioned to the logo where it's got a half moon underneath it, and that was about 1997 until the end of his career. He also had done some where it was Nova with the word custom underneath it. But here's some good examples of his logos. These are some of the very classic designs that he had done. In fact, I have here an example of the inlays that were used in this cue. So today I want to go through some examples of those designs with you to see some of the history of what he has done. He has some cues that he had never done in there, and just looking at some of his just general patterns. Nubs was featured in the Blue Book of Cues. So the Blue Book of Cues is a great record if you're into collecting cues. It has a lot of history about all the different cue makers and some of their history. Here's some examples of some of his business cards. Throughout the years, this is an example of a line of cues that he built exclusively and distributed through Japan. All right, let's take a look at some of the information and things that Nubs had given me. So when Nubs had retired from building cues and left West Bend, he had made a trip up to our shop and delivered me all of his patterns and designs and said that I could do whatever I wanted to with them and that I could have free reign with them. Up to this point, I really haven't used them at all and have just had them in my private collection, and I wanted to start to share what Nubs had given me. So here's an example of this particular pattern. Here's the original floppy disk with all the files for this particular build. Here's a list of the files with the files and a little detail of what he was inlaying in that pattern. Here's his sheet that he would use in the shop where it has its file names. And then you can see the tool path that would run around the outside. He had printed these, so each of the pieces that would build this particular pattern you can see in this drawing. Here's an example of some more of the different male parts for the points and what the radius of the cutters were. Right. Here you can see the color pattern that he had penciled out before he built the build. Here's a couple more examples of that inlay sheet, and various things. So now I want to take just a flip through a bunch of the books that he had provided so you can take a look and you can also enjoy what he had shared with me. So let's take a closer look at one of his shop binders here. So here you can see all of the different prints of his butt sleeves with the dimensions, the materials. Let's just take a quick flip through here. Now we're into some of his inlay files, along with the discs that he provided with. Here's some more examples. Yeah, here's even a picture of one of the cues. Here's a design but with Steve Miller, which Steve Miller used to work for Nova Cues and was very influential in a lot of the design. Here's an example where Nubs had named his files after the particular customer. So this individual who Nova and Nubs had built this cue for, his first name must have been Randy, because all of the file names are named Randy. I do the same thing in the shop. A lot of times if I build a custom cue, I will name the files after that particular customer. It's one of the reasons why I'm really good at remembering custom builds. All right, so here are a few things that are a little more intimate of various sheets. I found this one here in particular very interesting. So it was a customer list, and a few of these customers were customers of mine or people that I still currently build cues for. So there's Jim Oswald. He used to own Billiards and Bagels up in Oregon. Chris Zuter owns Fiddlesticks down in Ohio, and he buys, currently is a very good friend and customer of mine. Dean Flitter is from Wisconsin. I built a custom cue for him as well. There's Doc, which I would imagine is Doc's Bohemian Cues. So it's kind of interesting. Here's a list of some of his customers. Here's an example of a hand-drawn cue. It kind of gives you chills as you look at it. Even has the customer's note on it. There's a few additional drawings where he had laid out color schemes, the inlay patterns. Here's even an SOP on how to run his milling machine. This is one of my favorites. It's a hand-drawn, kind of the concept sketch for one of his patterns. I feel Nubs has left us with a legacy of his cue making history, and to honor his great cue making skills, I feel it would be appropriate to do a tribute cue in his memory.